A textured white background covered in large watercolor-style red, orange, and peach cloud-like washes. At the top center is the Rising Flame logo. Below, colorful text reads, "Presents Still We Rise, a celebration of disabled resistance, joy, and imagination." Thin blue corner lines frame the main text on the left and right sides. Shomita Basu, Purple People, International Purple Fest, 2024.
It is never about, like, okay, Shomita is having a problem. It's always about this entrepreneur with a disability is having a problem. This entrepreneur who is working in the field of disability is having a problem. So there's this huge burden on you to prove yourself so that you don't let the entire community down. I mean, it's bad enough if you are letting yourself down, and then suddenly you have this pressure of not letting the community down. Did somebody give me that onus, or did I take it on myself? That's a very hard thing to say, because if at every step you're asked to prove something for yourself and for your disability, I just don't think it's fair. And I've been called a strong person, a strong woman, but suddenly it started becoming like a weapon against me instead of, a strength I can build on. I was expected to be strong at every step, even and without a pause. Oh, by the way, people say, "Why is your organization taking so long?" I'm like, it's just how it is. There are different markets. The way you do things are differently. Plus, I don't work 16, 17 hours a day. I cannot and I will not. And then there's guilt that comes in with it. Oh my God, am I doing right by my company, by my employees, by my community? Oh. This constant feeling of guilt is, again, something which is so unfair. I think all of us go through. But it took me a lot of courage and a lot of hospitalization and a lot of falling sick to just say, you know what, this is what I can do. This is what I will do. We will see where it takes me.
Yeni Rosa Damayanti, Civil 20, Policy Consultation on Health and Disability, 2023.
Our rights to legal capacity must be admitted, must be recognized by the state. All over the world, up to now, there are only a few countries that recognize the rights to legal capacity of persons with psychosocial disabilities. And it means that our rights to refuse or accept medical treatments is not recognized in many parts of the world, including in Indonesia, and I'm sure also in India. That's one of the biggest problem that we face. The mortality rates are very high in those institutions, and the cause of the death is basically a treatable medical condition such as diarrhea, and many other unnamed conditions that just because they have mental illness, their complaint is not taken seriously. So many people with psychosocial disabilities, when they complain health problem, which is outside of the mental illness that they have, it is completely disregarded by the family members and by the doctors and medical service people. The complaint is just part of their symptom, the delusion, hallucination. So there are many complaints that disregarded, and that's why there are a high mortality rate amongst persons with psychosocial disabilities because of other conditions outside of the mental illness. Yeah, I'd like to talk about stigma and disability that makes many people still hesitate to identify themselves as a person with disabilities, especially those with invisible disabilities. There are many people with mental illness, for example, that hesitate to identify themselves as person with disabilities, because that means that they have to also explain what kind of disability that they have. And they have to explain that they have mental disability, psychosocial disabilities, which means that there's a stigma and consequences in terms of work, job, etc., etc. So there are many problems, especially for those with invisible disabilities to identify themselves as person with disabilities because of the stigma. Now, one of the things that we can do is that to explain the benefits of being protected by Disability Act compared to if we do not declare ourselves as person with disabilities. The benefit must, must be bigger than the stigma that we receive as person with psychosocial disabilities.
Nidhi Goyal. Lead, Grow, Change. 2019.
It's very interesting because consent somehow just gets framed into the logic or framework of harassment. Why? As a woman with a disability, as people, as human beings, we navigate consent on a daily basis. Simple thing. I need assistance. Every day, everywhere. No, not everywhere, but many places, right? And when I need assistance, the consent starts from something that Shrilekha said, what would you like to eat? Ask me. How would you need help? Ask me. Don't assume that I would need help. Also don't assume that I would need help in a certain way. And don't get offended because today I said, I could hold your elbow if you're comfortable. Tomorrow I said, can you please hold my cane and guide me? Because there are days, and I am entitled to my days, where I don't want to touch anybody. Where I'm like, don't touch me. I'm not in the mood of touching a stranger. I do not want to. As a woman, I don't get great vibes in this space. I don't get great vibes from this person. Or simple, I'm just feeling low. Give me that space because I have the right to consent. And that's the issue that we face. In everyday caregiving, and people don't understand that as people with disabilities, as women with disabilities, but also just people with disabilities, we have to navigate consent in so many spaces. And I circle back to popular media and one of my favorite scenes from Margarita with a Straw, which not many of you may have noticed, that she's assisting her to have a bath. The protagonist is a woman living with CP, cerebral palsy, wheelchair users, needs assistance in some of her daily activities. So she's taking the mother's giving her a bath, and this young girl who's in her teenage, she knows that she's going to meet this crush of hers in college. Yeah, and she's like, oh my God, I'm totally waiting for this time when I go and meet him. And she insists that her mother washes her hair. How many people who are 18 will be in this space where your consent could get violated in a simple daily living piece? Where somebody could say, you want to wash your hair, but you washed it yesterday, I will not wash your hair again. How many parents have that authority in that space in a 17-year-old's life? Right? As people with disabilities, we're even navigating this. So the scene why I like it is because the mother says, what are you doing? I washed your hair yesterday only. And she does all the usual barbar that mothers do. I wish my mom doesn't watch this video. But the usual thing that mothers do, but she washes her hair without saying that I have the right to choose because you need assistance. And I think that's the point I want to leave everyone with, to think about consent, to go beyond romance, navigating consent as people, as colleagues, as fellow human beings.
Shweta Mantri, Purple People. International Purple Fest, 2024.
When you're a woman, you have to perform. I'm just talking about a woman right now. You have to perform in two ways. One is you have to score well on the desirability factor, like you have to fit into the standards. Second, in the context of being a quote-unquote perfect homemaker or caretaker, because when you think of a woman in a household, you obviously think of the bahu duties that she's going to do and how she's going to take care of the house. But when you think of a disabled woman, a normal ableist, able-bodied person cannot connect the two, because for them, caretaking happens in a particular way, which disabled women cannot do or operate on. And here's what I would want to say is that, of course, like these concepts about caretaking in the context of non-disabled people is absolutely BS, because just because someone can hold one cup of chai and roam around in the house, that doesn't mean I have to do the same thing, you know, like I can keep my cup of chai on a trolley and then go to XYZ room in the house, and I can have multiple ways in which I take care of myself and my family members. It doesn't have to be the way you operate.
Tulang Suran Jigjid.
Hello to all. I am Tulam Suran Jigjid. I am the Executive Director of the Culture Center of the Deaf in Mongolia. The Culture Center of the Deaf was set up way back in 2014. In those days, I wanted to work for the betterment of deaf women, youth, and women with disabilities. With this determination in mind, the Culture Center of the Deaf, CCD in short, was set up. That time, there were many organizations working for persons with disabilities, however, not many focusing on deaf women and women with disabilities. Hence, CCD was set up with the objective of being a positive model for women with disabilities. Since then, we have faced a lot of ups and downs in our work, never stable. We definitely had to deal with many challenges in terms of lack of funding, resources, awareness, and accessibility. Even though we had many challenges, our work slowly progressed. It is hard to be resilient while working for women with disabilities, as there are many adversities. For example, how to do impactful work while faced with dwindling funding year after year. But women with disabilities should be determined in their goal to grow and advance so that they can motivate and empower other women with disabilities. In the coming years, we may still face challenges with funding as before, but we have to navigate through these adversities. For example, I linked my work on arts and culture with human rights issues, first by producing a documentary movie on how climate changes affect women with disabilities, and second, through a series of photo exhibits on how climate changes impact women. We can be resilient in our work by overcoming these challenges. Thank you.
Priyanji Guha. Honoring Helen Keller by Understanding Disability, 2021.
Let me give you a trailer of how my brain feels like in any public place, including schools and colleges. I request all participants to close your eyes. Imagine you are in a room where the walls are neon colored, red, yellow, orange, green, purple, blue, bright neon colored. The light is flickering in one corner. There is a tap in one corner where the water is constantly dripping. Tip, 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 tip. There's a loud washing machine somewhere in the corner, constantly making noise. Someone forgot to take the trash out, and it's piling up in the corner with a stinky smell. The water is tipping, machine is going on, the smell. You're trying to adjust yourself in that room, and suddenly hear a phone ringing and a pressure cooker whistle. You don't have a key to exit that room. There's sound, there's smell, sudden sound, bright colors. A little bit too much, right? This is how the world feels to me. You can open your eyes now. What do you do when you're this tensed? You try to focus on your breathing. You calm down. You pace yourself up and down the room. You shake your hands a little bit. You try to loosen up your shoulder. In other words, you do something what we call repetitive behavior. Now imagine someone told you, you cannot engage in self-soothing activity like that. It doesn't look good. It's weird. And if you're a woman, they will say, it's not very ladylike. Why can't you just sit still? Funny, right? Now imagine you're attending a class in that environment. How much do you think you'll be able to learn? Imagine giving exams in that environment. How much do you think you'll be able to score? Do you know the funny part? I did all of that. And of course, I did not score in the top 10 or top 20 even. And yet I'm the one who was labeled lazy, inattentive, distracted, weak student, mediocre, and the list goes on. I left for home after my 12th to go to college. I not only had to manage my academia, I also had to navigate socialization on my own. We were a bunch of teenagers from across the country, from multiple cultural contexts. I felt like I was thrown into the ocean without being taught how to swim. Now I not only had to study well, manage finance, maintain good health by eating and sleeping well, I also had to learn the subtle art of small talks and chit chats, communications without speaking, otherwise known as body language, tones, facial expressions, sarcasms, innuendos, which I couldn't understand. So I began to do what every autistic person does. I began observing other people and copying them. I take meticulous notes on how to walk, talk, smile, shake hands, nod, blink, eye contact. I think we autistic folks are so good at copying and acting. I'm surprised no one has ever nominated me for the Oscars yet.
Amali Margaret.
என் பேர் அமளி. நான் தமிழ்நாட்டிலேருந்து திருச்சி மாவட்டத்திலேருந்து பேசுகிறேன்.
My name is Amali. I'm from Trichy district, Tamil Nadu. I run the Banyan's Home Again program here. I was affected by mental illness and so was my older sister around 20 to 30 years ago. During the time of living with my mental illness, nobody in my community, in society, had awareness on such issues. People living with mental illness would be tied up, locked inside a room. They wouldn't be left outside. People would discriminate against them and treat them badly. Like that, we used to face a lot of problems. After seeing a lot of this, I thought, what can I do to support them? What do I do? But I had no awareness either about what can be done in such matters. I had no understanding and didn't know what to do. There was no support in my marriage from my in-laws also. I had suffered a lot of problems and faced a lot of cruelty then. Wherever my sister and I went looking for jobs, we were rejected because of our mental illness. Everyone resisted to give us jobs and made us suffer. After that, we came to know about the Banyan. We were treated at the Banyan, stayed there for treatment for about 3 years and got better. After that, we didn't know what to do. Firstly, the kind of difficulty that we had faced in society when they excluded us, isolated us, did not speak or even interact with us. We had longed for anyone who could come and just talk to us. These difficulties itself were very painful for us. After we came to know about the Banyan and we went there, got better and came back. What I wished for is that the struggles we faced, no one in society should face such difficulties. We should make such people understand and also be an example and work for them. Work for such people, people living with mental illness. We got affected by this, but no one should suffer like we did, so we should do this kind of a job is what we thought. So I love this job and I'm still doing it and I am very happy.
Know that everyone deserves to get exactly what we need. There is no such thing as not disabled enough. There is no such thing as too disabled for this world. If we were really never meant to survive, Audrey, what does it mean to insist that if we are going to live, it will be glorious, that we will have a wonderful youth, an ecstatic middle age, an orgasmic cronehood, that we will get to live to be old. Poem by Leah Lakshmi Pepenza Samarasinha.
Ikaite Umo, The Shadow Pandemic, Women with Disabilities and Domestic Violence, 2020.
We noticed that women with disabilities could not even, speak out. They could not, because of the shame and stigma. Women and girls with disability were even so ashamed to report that kind of issue. In a society where it's all right to abuse disabled people, and it's just normal. It's just normal to taunt, make fun of them, and abuse. So it became very difficult for women with disability to even report some very sensitive issues as rape or intimate, partner violence. And I was saying that in response to that, what we did at organizational level was to set up a tiny project called the Purple Corner. Now, this Purple Corner, we have a slogan that says, the Purple Corner, a safe space for orange talks. And this is a safe space where women with disabilities or girls could come in and tell us just the way it is, and without being psychologically embarrassed or ashamed. And so we set up this intervention to provide referrals where we can connect women with disability to resources and to see how we can address this domestic violence. There's no denying the fact it's there. So what do we do going forward? And the law enforcement agencies, how ready are they to listen to our issues? Because if a woman with disability got raped, it's like, shut up. You should be grateful somebody even raped you. So why are you making this hell of noise? I mean, that is the perspective. So when they get abused and they are reporting the abuse, oh, you get out. I mean, normally disabled people are supposed to be generally abused. So what is new about it? I don't know how we can collectively change this narrative and make us see that it is a real human rights issue, and henceforth, no woman with disability should be ignored. The rights of women with disability should not be ignored in any intervention. Because we all know the issues, we all know we've been abused, but what are the clear strategies that we can put in place to connect, build synergies? Because it's not something we can do. How do we challenge the spaces, so that it can open up to take disability discourse from a very human right perspective and not seen as issues that should be discussed in a separate, perspective.
Parita Dolakia, Empower to Rise Fellowship Launch, 2021.
And I still remember the first time I revealed to my manager that I am facing this situation. His first reaction was all like, oh, no wonder you do not hear us when we call you from the back. How he always thought that I am absent-minded or arrogant to ignore calls and certain comments. Yeah, I did not know that this image has been formed about me. But had I not revealed, maybe a lot more would have got lost in translation. Typically, my day at work involves a lot of meetings, presentations, connecting with different stakeholders. And people who are aware of my situation, are amazed with the way things are being worked out. Sometimes I amaze myself too. But how I do that is I rely a lot on written communication. Right? I leverage the available technology, software that provide live captions, hardware. There are certain hardware that anyone can collect voice from all the speakers in the room and transcribe it for you. My team, my company has been accommodative. Like if I'm in a meeting along with them, they will put it in the chat box that Karika, this question is directed to you. Or, when the managing director or other directors of the organization joins a meeting with me, they turn on their videos to ensure that I can see their movements. These are small gestures, but they can help me a lot. Right? Definitely there is a lot more that they can do. And all this is going a long way. But for them too, it's an uncharted territory. Like they too have never dealt with an employee like me. Okay, but we all are learning here in the field. But I strongly believe that inclusiveness is incomplete if we are not talking about the disabled community too. According to a recent report, some 90% of organizations are talking about D&I. But out of these 90%, only 4% are talking including disability in these conversations.
Aishwarya Balasubramanian, 2025.
I am Aishwarya from Navi Mumbai. Resistance to me means refusing to follow another's life blueprint to live my own. It means knowing I can make mistakes and rise from them at my own crib pace. It means not giving power to the capitalistic agenda of pushing my body beyond my capacity. It means crushing down invasive questions. It means unlearning the shame and guilt for being disabled. It means calling out people and systems using disabled slurs. It means reframing the public restrooms called handicap as accessible because language influences and shapes our thoughts. It means calling out ableism now, without hesitation or apology. I have lived with my disability, cerebral palsy with spastic diplegia, all my life, and I say this with pride and certainty, that it constantly shows me how to love, care, and show up for myself and the world around me. It was never a tragedy. I don't want to be known as successful or inspirational because those labels also don't understand the strength, courage, self-compassion, forgiveness, anger, honesty, grit, resilience tools, and love it takes for me to continue navigating in a world built on hierarchies and able-bodied notions of time, communication, and societies.
Janet Price, Holding Space, Understanding Invisible Disabilities and Intersectionality, 2024.
For a long time, my MS was diagnosed as ME, and people dismissed my experience, dismissed my symptoms, and refused to actually institute undertaking investigations. So for about 6 years, I was really pushed aside as a bit of a shirker and a time waster. Now, managing all of this is part of a disability justice response. It's dealing with the fact that at times, although the condition's impact is apparently limited, managing our own, managing others' uncertainties about the dynamism of these fluid conditions, about the ways they've changed, about our differing responses to the changing environment, is a very demanding process. And overprotectiveness can be as much of a problem as disinterested from others. Our own desire to appear normal, to pass, to be productive, to cope at work or at home. All of these can lead to anxiety, exhaustion, the feeling that our needs aren't valid, and also to other people's suspicion that we are just making things up, that we're cheating, that our symptoms are not to be believed. So we need people around us who recognize the varying nature of our conditions. But we also need an understanding of the interdependent need that we have for support, caring, recognition, empathy. It's not that we need to stand alone, but that we need to be with others, that our resources, their resources together can provide the support we need. And whether it's health staff, families, friends, strangers, what we need is some sort of affirmative engagement. It's not something that just comes in and hits us in the face or identifies us in a particular way, but it's something that is about an engagement, a relationship that leads to us building a sense of relief, of hope, of a potential future.
Riddhi Dastidar, Holding Space, Deconstructing Ableism Manual Launch, 2021.
I want to talk about my own therapist. She talks about, she's older than me, she's a lesbian, she understands that families are sites of violence, like all of this is extremely, extremely helpful to me, and she understands trauma. So my therapist talks about wanting me to thrive and not just survive. And I think approaching clients from this informed disability justice perspective and tailoring responses, you know, what I mentioned as workarounds, tailoring your responses to the problems they are facing, to the situations that they are facing, is really important. So that's one thing. The second, I think, is pretty obvious in terms of therapy, but still it's especially crucial for disabled people, the profound role that childhood still plays in how we respond to ourselves and others, because very often we have internalized a lot of shame. And in my case, for instance, so I don't look crazy except when I do. So when I'm having a really bad OCD episode, like when I'm not functional, I talk to myself, you know, I do compulsive hand washing, all sorts of things. And when I was a kid, my parents did not have the understanding to know what was wrong with me. So back then, like, the responses were things like physical beatings to stop being crazy, or, you know, threats of being taken to the asylum, or, you know, like the idea of getting help, like a psychiatrist or a therapist, was something that was a punishment. So my parents would be like, you know, if you keep this up, if you don't sleep at night, if you keep washing your hands, we'll have to take you to the psychiatrist. And I was so terrified of it. So it took me all the way until I think my final year of college to say that I have OCD and to actually go to therapy for the first time. You know, and I was at the point of a suicidal breakdown by then. So, I mean, I think even now it mediates how I respond to my parents and whether they are safe spaces for me or whether my family is triggering for me. So all of these things are really important for mental health practitioners to keep in mind.
Kavya Mukhija, Lead, Grow, Change, 2019.
Consent becomes more or less apparent when you are disabled. Given the stigma enveloping persons with disabilities, seeking our consent is not something that is kept in mind. It is an all or none phenomena. Either I need help all the time or I don't need help at all. Either I can walk or I cannot walk at all. But it doesn't work like that. There are things that I can do on my own, like eating food or cracking bad jokes. I have had experiences when people have assumed that I need help even without my mentioning it explicitly. My memory is filled with instances when relatives and strangers would pinch my cheeks without my permission, assuming that I liked it because I was cute. At home, things are different. When I struggle to roll my wheelchair near the table or find it difficult to grab something that is kept far away, my sister gets it for me, only when I ask her to, which means that she respects my individuality and the norms we have agreed upon. My needs and wants are given importance, and I'm not forced to do something that I don't want to do, like ditching bath on a not so good day. If there's something that I should do, my parents help me understand why I should give it a shot. For example, during my board exams, I would panic every day before the exam and eventually ask my father to allow me to skip the exam. My father would then tell me that it was just an exam and that they were there to pull me back up if I didn't come out with flying colors. So the element of force and compulsion was replaced by acceptance and understanding. Focus word, mutual agreement. For me, consent blooms from an understanding of another person as an individual, irrespective of any other parameters. Consent doesn't mean assumption, so it is always a good idea to ask before stepping in a person's personal space. Consent comes from viewing and treating another person as you would like to be treated yourself.
Zainab Sanataranam, I Can Lead Talks, 2021.
My family was very supportive in this process. They have always given me agency to decide what I want, to give me freedom to choose. So in my 7th standard, I was very clear that I was doing law. So when I got the chance, I ended up in Gujarat National Law University. So it was a great place for persons with disability, uh, but it does not have inclusive environment as such, inclusive infrastructure, if I would be clear. So there, the problem started. And as my perfect girl image, I wanted to maintain my perfect girl image. So I did not say anything because then it would create a conflict, and I don't want to end up in that situation. So I keep on sacrificing, and I come from a disability quota. So people believe that no matter what I achieve or no matter how much good I study, they only see me through my disability lenses. That, yeah, she's a person with disability, things are very easy for her. But I worked very hard, that nobody has seen. Then one day when I was sitting in my social work class and we were discussing about how to bring a change or what could bring a change, I observed and think about it, and then I I come to a conclusion that things can only change when you start a dialogue. So I speak up to the authorities about the bad infrastructure which GNLU has. Not that bad. See, I am just opting this diplomatic view now, but it was quite problematic for persons with disability. But then GNLU administration was very kind, and they not kind is not the right word, but they understood. They were very inclusive enough. So they listened to my issues and then resolved it also. And that gave me a power.
Nelly Basili. The Shadow Pandemic, Women with Disabilities and Domestic Violence, 2020.
Something that I think is important when we talk about breaking the isolation, because we talk a lot about violence and just women with disabilities being more prone to violence because of isolation, because of feeling far removed from community. One of the things that we did a few years ago, actually last year, it feels like a few years ago because of 2020, but we did a program where we partnered with a dance school, a dance studio, where the idea was to have an accessible space for women with various disabilities to come and do dance and be in community and work together. And part of that was to really break the isolation and bring women together, and that there are spaces for them and designed for them from the beginning, because the dance studio was like, we want to do this, but we need to partner with an organization that understands the needs and accessibility for women with disabilities. So we brought in, sign language interpreters, and we brought in, made sure that the space was accessible physically, brought in attendance, so that everyone felt included. And in so doing, it really, what we heard from the women is that it broke the isolation for them. It was really important.
Aishwarya O. I Can Lead Talks, 2021.
Things changed. They changed very gradually, but at least they sort of changed. The internet found ways in which I could connect with other disabled people, even without meeting them, physically at least. Little things showed me the way out: blog posts from activists, Instagram and Facebook timelines that showed me little snippets of other people's experiences, and WhatsApp groups where people shared their opinions about things that happened to them in daily life. Like I said, things changed for me. I began questioning why having a disability was considered so bad. I began wondering why courses in sociology don't talk about people with disabilities as a social category of people who've been discriminated against, the way they talk about gender, caste, and class. I moved out and began trying out new things that I'd been forbidden from trying out and sort of policed against doing earlier on as a woman with a disability. I began choosing who I wanted to be as a disabled woman. and the path took me away from what family and society told me disabled people should be like. It was in October 2020 that I joined the I Can Lead Fellowship, and I met some amazing women who became friends, who became my community. As disabled women, they could understand my issues, my irritants, my triumphs, and my failures in a way that others sometimes couldn't always do that. Through the fellowship, I found mentors who taught me much more than those biographies of Helen Keller and Louis Braille, told through the lens of my non-disabled but well-meaning friends. Here were women with disabilities living in the same or similar cultural milieu as me, whose shared experiences gave me concrete ideas of how to deal with my own experiences. Unlike those biographies that haunted me as a child, the collective message that they shared was not how to be an inspiration for all. I learned how to communicate my needs clearly and negotiate coherently for accommodations. And we communicated through modes that felt the most comfortable to us, whether they were text, audio, video, or a combination of these.
Smita Sadasivan, Lead, Grow, Change, 2019.
Actually, it's a combination of all these things, like stigma, stereotype, inaccessibility, and more basically the assumptions. Women with disabilities are assumed to lack capacity, and basically decisions are made for women with disabilities right from the family. Even in my personal experience, when I had a relapse, I had multiple sclerosis, we do get relapses frequently, and when I had a major relapse initially, my dad, MS needs a lot of money for medicines. Our medications are very expensive, and my dad had to work out my account with my bank manager, but he went and asked my bank manager, and they both came to a decision that my dad can operate my bank account. Everything is fine, but he did it without asking me. I was on bed, and so families to start with, and the society, even the government, for to say that just take decisions thinking that it is for your betterment. Of course, it can be for our betterment, but our consent is very important. So from the family level, we had to raise our voice. So I told my dad, when I came to know about it, that this is not right. Yeah, okay, you did it for my betterment, but then my consent is also necessary. You should have asked me, I would have definitely said yes. So it starts from there. At every level we have to raise our voice. That is how the activism begins.
Rusha Chowdhury.
Hi everyone, my name is Rusha, and I am a person who stutters, and in this video I will be sharing an excerpt from a writing where I speak about how I resist the system every day just by being a person who stutters, and also how that also makes me a badass. Okay, so here we go. The system wages psychological warfare in order to tame the rippling flow of the stutterer's speech. It laughs, grimaces, and rolls its eyes at us. Yet we persist. The very existence of a stutterer is a reminder to the system that it is flawed in its claim that straight talk is the only kind of talk. It is perhaps through the stutterer's bouncing, prolonged speech that the fast-paced capitalist world of rapid fluency may see the importance of taking the time to breathe. So yeah, keep sharing your stories of resistance, and honestly, we don't have to go out of our ways to find resistance and power, because it is all inside us, and it is our own stories that we shared in order to amplify them.
Agnes Chindimba.
Today we want to talk about challenges that it takes women. We have missed that it takes women here in Zimbabwe, in the world. It has big challenge, gender-based violence, same-sex sexual violence, same-sex economy, same-sex child marriage. All the same affect different types of women in the world. What did we do? First, we raise awareness on GBV for girls, women with disabilities, and deaf women specifically. We encourage parents, communities, and STEM schools to make sure that deaf girls and women go to school and access education, because education empowers them. We work together with community leaders, families, parents, policymakers to make sure that everyone understands how deeply to Black communities.
Neturani.
मेरा नाम नीतू है, मैं देहरादून उत्तराखंड से हूँ और मेरा जन्म उत्तराखंड के एक छोटे से गांव में हुआ.
My name is Neethu. I am from Dehradun, Uttarakhand, and I was born in a small village in Uttarakhand. When I was born, I was okay, but when I turned 1.5 years old, I was diagnosed with polio in my legs. My family realized this later, and when they found out these were the words of my maternal grandfather, she is now like a burden, so please finish her now by injecting her with poison. My father said, no, she is my daughter, I will not do any such thing. He loved me very much. And the challenges in my life started from then. When I started growing up and understanding, I realized that there are many challenges in my life. We did not have any toilets at home. I had to drag myself to the farms for the same. After a long time, my father got a toilet made that also was very far from home, and that was an Indian-style toilet. Whenever I would go to use the toilet, I would change my pajamas and go, and very often it would get soiled, it would get wet, and I would come back and change my pajamas. In that era, people did not know that we had to make an accessible toilet. In those years, people made very few toilets only, and those who constructed toilets also were not aware about this. I would stay alone at home and I would not go anywhere. I would not be able to participate in any event. My family would leave me at home and go. I would be really sad and upset, so I would sit on the terrace of my house. I would keep gazing at the road and the cars. I did not attend school till I was 13 because there was no such school where there would be a possibility to travel. After 13 years of my life, one school started where there was a possibility to travel, and so my father admitted me to that school. There were many challenges in school as well. There were no wheelchairs there, there was no ramp, and I could not participate in the morning prayer. Nor could I sit outside with other kids and eat food. I would eat inside itself. The toilet was also very far. That is why I would hold my toilet. The person assisting me was a man, and I would feel shy to tell him, and so I would hold my toilet. I would come home and only then use the toilet. There were other challenges in school. By the time I passed 5th grade, I was removed from the school stating that I was too old and we can't lift her and assist her. After that, my father tried to get admission somewhere, but it did not happen. because there were no such schools. Then I was at home only. I somehow passed my high school. And in my life when I grew up, I decided that I would work on disability only. The challenges that I am facing, I will work on those challenges. And now we have been working on disability for approximately 20 years. I am working on disability rights. We work on diverse issues within disability like health, education, accessibility, advocacy, livelihood, and other such issues.
Lizzie Kiyama, Civil 20, Policy Consultation with Women with Disabilities, 2023.
So we found that, for example, the duty bearers, so from government, for example, were not investing in social support within the community. So communities of women with disabilities did not receive information when it comes to access to their sexual reproductive rights. They did not necessarily receive knowledge on SRHR, even from the education system, menstrual health and hygiene as well. Some of this information and knowledge was not readily available to communities of women with disabilities. When there was a need in the communities, the steps to follow, where to go, how to receive support, this knowledge was not also readily available to communities of women with disabilities. So we came up with a program that trains women with disabilities to become toll-free service responders. So it is a toll-free service that is run by women with disabilities in 8 counties in Kenya. And what happens is when somebody has a need around gender-based violence, around sexual reproductive rights, they call this number and it directs them to the woman in her specific county. So this woman who will pick up the phone will then be able to provide local intervention. So if you need to know where an accessible healthcare center is, where there's a campaign around family planning, where can you access free family planning, where can you access vaccines and things like that, the woman on the other side of the toll-free number would be able to provide communities of women with disabilities this information. And it has been extremely helpful because also when the pandemic happened and there was a lot of isolation, and women with disabilities were left by themselves, and there was a lot of violence that was happening, a lot of loneliness, a lot of cases of increased pregnancies also among the communities of women with disabilities. This toll-free platform, which is called Mama Siri, was able to provide an intervention and bridge the gap for communities of women with disabilities. Governments begin to look at models such as these that are led by women with disabilities, that build the capacity of women with disabilities to use technology, to be empowered, to generate income, but also to give back to their own communities. These women are leaders in their community, and they also facilitate, peer-to-peer mental health, because again, during the pandemic, we also realized, because of all the isolation, an increased need for mental health support within the community.
Shrishti Pandey, Lead, Grow, Change, 2019.
Isn't it just amazing how free and safe we feel when we are around our friends? How we can so casually share every and anything with them. However, when it comes to friendship and disability, the relationship gets a little complicated. Sometimes it would also happen that they would help me once in a while and then keep bragging and reminding me about it for an entire year. After a while, I started understanding these behaviors, and I promised myself that I won't let this happen to me again. But whenever they would try to use me, I would automatically start thinking of the times when they gave me physical support. And I would tell myself that maybe it's okay, that maybe I owe them this much. On most days, I would feel like a burden. And my brain would sideline all the favors that I had done for them and only focus on the favors that I received. So I started offering them extra help. I would offer them to complete their homework. I would give them my notes. I would ask them every week if there was something I could help them with. I started putting their needs over mine just to balance it all out when that balance wasn't even needed. Even now, when my friends cancel the whole plan if the venue isn't accessible, or when they take out extra time to, search for places which are accessible, my heart becomes full. Initially, it is full of gratitude, but then the guilt starts to take hold of me. The fact that disability comes with certain responsibilities and that my friends will have to take care of them sends me on a guilt trip, and it is very difficult to come out of it. And most times, I am unable to express this to them. You see, sometimes something as simple as talking can be one of the hardest things to do. People often tell us how we should always stand up for ourselves, how we should always speak up for ourselves, but for me, speaking up is not always easy. It is really scary, but I think it's only natural to feel this way sometimes. I have started taking baby steps and I'm getting there gradually. I am hopeful that one day I'd be brave enough to share all these things that I'm sharing with you today to my friends.
It is music when you practice opening your mouth and liking what you hear, because it is the sound of your own true voice. It is sunlight when you practice seeing strength and beauty in everyone, including yourself. It is dance when you practice knowing that what you do and the way you do it is the right way for you and can't be called wrong. Poem by Laura Hershey's.
Muskaan Bhatia.
When I learnt about this apex organization in India, claiming to protect and safeguard our rights, I passionately became a member, but in due course, I faced verbal abuse, sexual harassment, threats enveloping me in stress and mental agony. And when I shared my experience with the leadership that I had long trusted, they victimized me, defended, trivialized, and normalized the conduct of the abuser, excluded me, and even dismissed me from the organization. Yet I refused to succumb, to be repressed, to disappear like the people before me. Determined, I spoke up against this injustice, filed complaints, and pursued legal recourse, demanding safer policies and to set a precedent that such coercion should never be tolerated. My persistence has sparked awareness inside and outside my community that deaf women can resist and be heard. Resilience, to me, is to be steadfast when faced with adversity and to stand firm against abuse, discrimination, and injustice. My dream is to make positive changes to ensure equity, justice, and inclusion, and for safer spaces, for which I continue my fight. Thank you.
Myeon Kim. Knowledge Session. Asia Pacific Beijing Plus 30, 2024.
Reflecting on the Beijing Declaration of 1995, almost 30 years ago, when I was young, I remember my experience attending the first World Conference on Women as a representative of Korean women with disabilities. At the time, our voices were really recognized and organized advocacy for women and girls with disabilities in Korea was still in its infancy. There I took on the challenging task of developing and representing of the agenda for women with disabilities. Among the 12 key issues on the Korean women's agenda, hoping that our voices would be heard within the bolder women's rights movements in Beijing. But however, it was disappointing that women with disability were not given a separate agenda, nor was the term women with disabilities visible in the final Beijing document. Once in Beijing, however, I encountered a moment I will never forget. There are not over 200 women with disability leaders from all around the world gathered in the disability tent. Each day we held workshops and at noon organized a powerful wheelchair train chanting, "Women with disabilities are women too. Guarantee our accessibility, never turning back." We stood united, making our voices heard in historical call for the inclusion of disability rights in the global women's rights agenda. This unified led to further momentum in the years that followed. In 2001, as the United Nations began drafting the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities of Adult Committee, I was a coordinator of the women's group in the International Disability Caucus. Together with these women leaders, I met in Beijing. We gathered again in New York at UN headquarters, forming a unified voice. Through our collective effort, we successfully advocacy for Article 6, a standalone article addressing unique rights and challenges of women involved with disabilities, and ensured that our demands were included across the entire convention. This leadership experience taught me that our unite and solidarity are the very force that empower us, driving forward meaningful change for women with disabilities worldwide.
Jaejag Ghosh.
Around 2015, my husband and me.
Around 2016, my husband and I decided to adopt a child. So, according to the process, we applied to KARA and then the legal process started. All the process was completed, and then we had to wait for around 1.5 years before we got to know that there is a child for us, and then you have to go and see her. So then my husband and I went to Orissa. It was a remote part of Orissa. And when we went to the adoption center, they told me, "How can you adopt a child? You have a psychosocial disability. You might turn violent, and that would harm the child." I said, "I have cerebral palsy. I have no other issues. And why should I turn violent?" They said, No, you can't adopt the child. Moreover, how will you communicate with the child? You cannot communicate, so we can't give you the child. So we had to come back. After that, we wrote to KARA, and I contacted lawyers and disability rights activists who stood by me. And finally, we could reach the authorities in KARA in Delhi, who were actually very supportive. Then they order the adoption agency. No, you have to give them the child. So this was the barrier, the attitudinal barrier I faced while adopting my child. Even now, as a disabled mother, I get vibes from the society that I'm not a competent enough mother. Because of the disability, that question of competency always comes in motherhood. Being a mother is a challenge, whether you have a disability or you are so-called normal. But because of the disability, the question of competency is always highlighted. This becomes the main focal point.
The question of competency is always highlighted. This becomes the main focal point.
Srinidhi Raghavan. Invisible Disabilities Explained. Purple Talks with Nipun Malhotra. Indian Autism Center, 2025.
At Rising Flame, one of the things we do in our interviews is we ask whether or not we know and that person has disclosed or not. One of the questions is, what reasonable accommodation do you need in order to work? Because we're a cross-disability team and our access needs sometimes conflict with each other. But we have to build that environment where everybody's access needs are in some way met. A lot of reasonable accommodation for invisible disabilities is also us discovering what helps me, right? What could possibly be different if I had to be there? And I think in some ways we don't want to disclose our disability because we think it's going to work against us, right? Especially mental health conditions. There's a lot of stigma, right? It's like, oh, she's depressed, she can't do anything, right? And that's possibly true for somebody who's really struggling, right? But it's the fear that if we disclose, then they will not hire us, right? That's one thing. The second thing is that I think there is very little understanding of how can I support myself when I have an invisible disability that may impact the work I am doing, right? I can just give you from my own example. One of the things that we began to do when I started to travel for work is that we would try to keep a separate, like I would be in a single occupancy room, and we began to request it as reasonable accommodation. Part of the reason was because I needed that shutdown at the end of the day that had no interaction with another human, right? Which is something I can manage in my own house, but I can't manage it when I'm traveling for work. And it really began to help me to understand, oh, I actually do need that 1 hour, 2 hours, or the night where it's just me in order to be able to wake up in the morning and do what I need to do, right? But that reasonable accommodation discovery happened because we tried it once and it seemed to work, and then we continued. I think a lot of people don't know what that thing is that would help them to do better, right? And maybe they do. A lot of other people do. So I know the disclosure has impacts, right? But what I think is helpful is if employers begin to ask the question, right? If they ask the question, what are the supports you need? Even if you're not asking the question from a perspective of this person lives with a disability, but what are the supports you need is a really, really helpful way for us to proactively provide support, right?
Raj Mariwala, Civil 20, International Conference, 2023.
Now, our workplaces mirror the prejudices of the larger society. That's not a surprise. But more than that, our workplaces are made and designed for a default. And what's that default? It's abled, cis heterosexual, male, usually from a dominant race, caste, religion, right? Now, at this point, many of you in the room may think, at this point, many of you in the room may think that my workplace is not like that. We treat everyone equally. And to this, I have to say that when the environment, when our social context, when our cultural context throws up barriers, you cannot be treating people equally because your workplace is built for the default. What does inclusion and safety in an organization mean for those with invisible disabilities? What would you have to do? I think some first thoughts could be, maybe we should include this in hiring. We should be, very intentional about putting it into a JD. But even before we get to that stage, let me tell you that most people with invisible disabilities report that they have to perform immense emotional labor to avoid telling others about their condition. And if they've already disclosed about their condition, they may live in fear of other people finding out. They may live in fear of consequences. And why is that? You may wonder, what's the big deal in talking about this? The big deal is that this type of visibility without protection is a trap. And so in this case, censoring is an act of safety. It's an act of self-preservation. And along with it comes hypervigilance, it comes scrutiny, it comes surveillance, because you will have to disclose, or you may have to disclose to make your disability apparent. And that tells us a couple of things, that fitting in your work environment involves more than just being able to do your job from a technical perspective, right? Your supervisors are looking for people who can fit in. Are fun Fridays easy to do for people with autism? Are socials easy to do for people with autism? No, right? And so what do we do in this case? What helps with disclosure? What helps with safety?
Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak improbably clear, I rise. And so